Today, we're unraveling one of the most thrilling, high-stakes escapes of World War II, the race to save Norway's gold from the clutches of the invading Nazi forces. The movie The Gold Run on Netflix has captivated audiences, becoming the second most watched film on the platform. But how much of it is real, which scenes are ripped straight from history, and where does the film take creative liberties? I can answer that better than most, because this story isn't just history to me, it's family. My grandfather was actually the man who led the Gold Run, and I've had the rare privilege of reading his classified reports from the operation. I even contributed to The Escape with Norway's Gold, a documentary that aired alongside the film in 2022. If you want the full, untold story, I've got a deep dive video right here on YouTube. But for now, let's break down the Gold Run, separating fact from fiction in this incredible chapter of World War II history. This is History with Magnus. Remember to subscribe, and now let's get into it. But first, some background for the story. In the spring of 1940, 6 months after the outbreak of World War II, the Germans are advancing toward Norway. Their mission is to seize control of the Norwegian coastline, capture the king and government, and secure nearly 75 tons of gold stored in the vaults of the Bank of Norway. But to take Oslo, where the gold is kept, they must first pass the Norwegian fortress Oscarsborg, strategically positioned in the Oslofjord. Under the cover of darkness, with all lights extinguished, the German fleet moves silently through the waters. However, they are spotted by the fortress commander, Birger Eriksson. To illustrate the confusion among the Norwegians, one of the officers asks a pivotal question. Norway is officially neutral, but warships sneaking in at night with no lights are anything but friendly. Without hesitation, Eriksson gives the order to fire the cannons.
Kom in, kommando!
For the first time in 125 years, Norway is at war.
In!
The fortress' mighty cannons roar to life, striking the German flagship Blücher twice. The heavily armed vessel, now out of control, drifts helplessly, straight toward a hidden Norwegian torpedo battery concealed beneath the waterline. 2 torpedoes are launched, the second finds its mark, hitting Blücher dead center in a devastating blow. The ship, carrying the bulk of the German invasion force meant to take Oslo, begins to tilt dangerously to the port side. Realizing the inevitable, the captain issues the order to abandon ship. This unexpected resistance delays the German invasion of Oslo by 9 to 10 hours, crucial time that allows Norway's king, the government, and the country's precious gold reserve time to escape. And this is where our story begins. If you haven't seen the movie yet, consider this your spoiler alert. The film opens with the birthday celebration of the main character Frederick's daughter, when suddenly the air raid sirens begin to wail. In reality, his daughter did have a birthday that day, but unlike in the film, where she is depicted as a 5-year-old, she had just turned 1 the day before the invasion. But, of course, an infant wouldn't make for particularly compelling cinema. The invasion itself also began in the middle of the night while most people were fast asleep. It wasn't until Frederick received a phone call that he realized what was happening and had to rush to work to assist with the evacuation, creating a conflict with his wife. The conflict is pure fictional, but this makes the character have another important motive, which is personal. A main character in a movie needs both an external and an internal conflict. The external is saving the gold, and the internal is his family. It makes the story emotional, like overcoming fear, doubt, or like in this case, guilt. It makes the character grow and feel real, but in reality, his wife was very understanding and took care of their daughter while he was away. The first priority was to secure trucks, and the way this is portrayed in the film is quite accurate.
Jeg kommer fra Norges Bank. Jeg har på et viktig oppdrag. Vi trenger transport. Vær så Yes.
Several unsuspecting Norwegians suddenly found themselves caught up in the evacuation effort. The German cruiser, which had been sunk, carried a significant portion of the invasion force that was bound for the capital, delaying the invasion with several hours. Hundreds of soldiers perished when the ship went down, but many managed to swim ashore, where they were often aided by confused Norwegians who had no idea what was unfolding. Meanwhile, members of the Norwegian government began destroying crucial documents to prevent them from falling into German hands. Finance Minister Oscar Torp then summons Frederick. Torp is a man who trusts him implicitly, though Frederick has no idea that his life is about to take a dramatic turn.
Vi må få det ut av landet.
Oskar, en sånn oppgave må da gå til noen i bankvesenet eller forsvaret.
Jeg spør deg ikke om dette som en venn. Jeg ber deg ikke om en tjeneste her. Det er en ordre. Du får her på oppdraget å lede transporten av norske statsgullbåndene.
And this is exactly how it happened in real life, word for word. At Norges Bank, the employees begin carrying the gold out to the trucks. The trucks are soon swamped by people who are desperate to get away from Oslo, and the armed guards had to keep them away.
Nei, sir. Nei.
At the time, gold was the foundation of Norway's economy, and if it were to disappear, it would spell total disaster for the Norwegian war economy, something they desperately needed to preserve. It is true that the last truck left Oslo just as German soldiers marched up Oslo's streets, but they were not as close as the film suggests. When the Germans arrived at the bank, they immediately took control of the employees, who tried to stall for time by refusing to cooperate. The bank manager, Nikolai Rieg, tried to delay time.
Wir haben gesuchen, aber kann nicht finden. Schlüssel?
And didn't cooperate until he was threatened.
Herr Rieg, es ist wichtig für Sie zu verstehen.
Eventually, the Germans managed to open the vault door, and this is one of the film's biggest inaccuracies. In the movie, the Germans arrive and find an empty vault, but that's not what really happened.
Because in the movie, the Norwegians take all the gold with them and leaves nothing for the Germans, and that's what you see in the movie. This is not true. 1/3 of the gold was left in the vault because Norwegian law said that a minimum of 1/3 of the gold must always be kept in the bank. And Norwegians, being Norwegians, of course, followed the law.
Frederick and the Minister of Finance set out for Lillehammer, where the king, the gold, and the government were already heading. Upon arrival, the gold was locked inside the vault in Lillehammer, where it remained for a few days. However, as German forces advanced toward the city, they were forced to move the gold once again. They decide to transport the gold to the coastal town of Andalsnes, where a British warship awaits to evacuate the gold, the king, and the government. Frederick is assigned a company of soldiers to guard the treasure, though none of the regular troops are told what the crates contain. However, due to the Norges Bank stamp on the crates, it doesn't take long for them to guess the truth. They are protecting Norway's gold reserves. Meticulously, Frederick begins cataloging every single crate, whether filled with gold bars or coins. He repeats this process at every location where the gold is moved.
And this is true. He was very, very meticulous and noted all of the cases. And during the run, only 3 gold medals were lost, and there were 49 tons of gold. So that's quite an astonishing accomplishment.
Meanwhile, the Germans are quick to track their movements. A massive manhunt begins, involving soldiers, vehicles, and aircraft. During the escape, Frederick reunites with his sister Nini Gleditsch, who has also become part of the gold transport effort. She is accompanied by her husband Christian Gleditsch, though he is notably left out of the film. This part of the story, however, is incorrect. He only met his sister when they reached Andalsnes, but because she is the female protagonist in the film, she is brought in from the beginning of the movie. Both continued with the gold transport all the way to Tromsø, with Christian eventually serving as Frederick's second-in-command. Among those joining the mission is the famous poet Nordahl Grieg, who has volunteered as a soldier. In the movie, Grieg lifts the spirits of the troops by reciting verses that embody Norway's unyielding will to resist, just like he did in real life.
Utvide mennesket. Sett av oss I en forsvarstilstand mot den katastrofen som truer verden.
Major Bjorn Sunde leads the soldiers assigned to protect the gold. Just like in real life, he is portrayed as a precise and commanding officer, making his expectations crystal clear.
Trapp! Oppstilling!
However, the film takes significant liberties when it comes to his relationship with Frederick. While the movie depicts frequent arguments between them over who is in charge,
Jeg takker for hjelpen. I fremtiden så ønsker jeg slike ting selv.
Nei, slutt. Dette nå en militær operasjon å regne, og det de som skal innrette dem etter meg.
this is completely false. In reality, the two work together harmoniously, but of course that wouldn't make for a very exciting film, so again, it was added for dramatic effect. The conflict between Frederick and bank manager Andreas Lund, who is in charge of the Lillehammer branch, is also entirely fabricated. Lund was fully aware of the situation and never refused to open the vault. I hate to repeat myself, but once again, for dramatic effect. However, one thing that is absolutely true is that the bank manager struggled to remember the vault's code. The vault was brand new and had a 20-digit code. In case he was captured by the Germans, he had only written down the first and last digits, committing the remaining 18 to memory. But now, under immense pressure, he was struggling to recall them. It actually took him half an hour to remember the full sequence. Just as shown in the film, explosives were being prepared to blow the door open as a backup plan. Fortunately, Lund finally managed to recall all the numbers correctly and got the door open. With the requisitioned train, they planned to continue their journey toward Andalsnes. German aircraft were in pursuit, forcing them to travel mostly at night to avoid detection. During the day, they hid the train inside tunnels, taking advantage of Norway's rugged landscape. Now they concealed the train deep in the Norwegian mountains, where enemy fighter planes couldn't reach them. Soon, they received word that a British ship could take them aboard from Andalsnes, so they set course for the harbor. But just as they were transferring the gold from the train to the ship, they came under attack from German aircraft, one of the most dramatic moments of the entire transport operation. They had managed to load a few crates of gold onto the ship, but under heavy fire, they were forced to retreat and move the train away from the docks. Amazingly, they managed to escape, hiding the train once again in the vast Norwegian mountains without suffering serious damage or losing any of the gold. The British ship has sailed away from Andalsnes, leaving Frederick and the gold behind, and now they must figure out how to move forward with their precious cargo. This is when Nini and her husband in real life became part of the transport. Nini had once fought in the Spanish Civil War against Franco, where she also adopted a young Spanish girl. Now she found herself in the midst of yet another war. Nini is portrayed by Ida Elise Brock, and after the premiere, where my family were honored guests, my uncle said that was exactly how I remembered Nini. Later at the premiere party, I shared my uncle's words with Brock. She was deeply moved and very grateful. Nini travels to Mold, where the government and the king are staying. She brings with her the cash they managed to save and hands it over. The Germans are gaining the upper hand, and Frederick receives word that the British are pulling out of Norway. HMS Glasgow is waiting for them in Mold, but time is running out. They manage to secure cars to transport the gold, but the Germans are right on their heels, hunting them down from the skies. To reach Molde, they must cross a fjord, but just as they do, they come under enemy fire. They barely escape, bullets whistling past them, but in reality, this isn't quite how it happened. This is, once again, for dramatic effect. In truth, Frederick waited until nightfall to make the crossing, knowing that under the cover of darkness, enemy fighter planes wouldn't be able to spot and attack them. Transporting the gold across the fjord took the entire night because the ferry was small and there were many vehicles to get across, requiring multiple trips. When they arrive in Molde, the city lies in ruins, engulfed in flames. The devastation is historically accurate. Several small towns were completely destroyed by the Germans in their relentless pursuit of the gold, and Mold was among them. After the war, the entire city had to be rebuilt from the ground up. As they begin loading the gold onto the ship, time is running out. The vessel will depart as soon as the government and the king arrive. But when the government finally gets there, a staggering 18 tons of gold still remain ashore. Frederick is given a direct order: he must transport the rest north. By now, Molde is ablaze from German bombings, and the bank, where the paper currency is stored, is also on fire. With help, Nini and Frederick manage to break down the door and rescue the money just in time. They grab everything they can, but as they rush outside, a nearby fuel tank suddenly explodes. They barely manage to duck around a corner in time. This is historically accurate. Had they been just a few steps slower, they wouldn't have survived. Eventually, they reach Frøya in northern Norway, but the locals are skeptical of these strangers, claiming to be from Oslo.
De vet ikke hvem jeg er. De tror vi er tyskere.
Frederick pleads for assistance, and 3 fishing captains step forward, offering to help. This part is partly true. According to Frederick's own report, he initially attempted to requisition the vessels on behalf of the government, but the captains refused. However, instead of rejecting him outright, they assured him no requisition was necessary. They would do it voluntarily. As they sail, the Germans spot them and launch an attack, but the crew manages to escape by blending in with a swarm of fishing boats, making it impossible for the Germans to determine which vessel is carrying the gold. Frustrated, the Germans eventually abandon the chase, allowing the sailing ships to continue their journey safely. It is true that the Germans ultimately gave up, but not before several tense encounters. On multiple occasions, German planes circled above them, seemingly debating whether to strike. At one point, when a fighter plane began circling, Christian Gleditsch and another man quickly grabbed a fishing net and pretended to cast it into the water. They had no idea how to actually do it, but the deception worked. The German pilot was convinced and flew off in search of a more suspicious target. The film ends with Frederick receiving word that his wife Ingrid and their daughter have safely escaped to Sweden. This is partially true. They did flee to Sweden, but not immediately. They remained in Oslo for several months. It was only when the Germans began arresting the families of those involved in the gold transport that they were forced to flee. Frederick and his family spent the war in the United States, only returning to a liberated Norway in 1945. The final poem we hear Nordahl Grieg recite in the film is one of Norway's most famous, written on the country's national day, May 17th. The comment in the film from the captain about his poem is also accurate.
Vi er så få her I landet. Hver fallen er bror og venn. Vi har de døde med oss. Den dag vi kommer igjen.
But the sources doesn't say if he was choked up like he was in the movie.
Det var ikke så verst, det. Grieg.
Grieg himself died in 1943 when the bomber he was in was shot down over Germany. He remains one of Norway's most significant poets and a powerful symbol of the nation's resistance against the Germans. All in all, I think The Gold Run provides a solid and engaging depiction of the dramatic escape with Norway's gold reserves. The film does a great job of building tension, featuring strong performances, and capturing the chaos and pressure of the invasion, making the story accessible to a wide audience. That said, some elements feel more contrived than necessary. In particular, the characters Ingvar Berg and Odd Henry, played by Axel Boyum and Sven Norden, felt unnecessarily silly and artificial.
Kunne vært hjemme nå. Men nei da, vi skulle ut og hygge der.
Jeg hører de sier det, unge mann. Men nå er vi her begge to, så nå må du holde kjeft. Bruk løkta.
They are entirely fictional and have no basis in real history. While they were likely intended as comic relief, I found them out of place in an otherwise dramatic and serious story. It's a shame because both actors are very talented. The problem lies in the script itself. As for historical accuracy, the film does take some liberties. For instance, it's true that only one person lost their life during the escape, but in reality, this was a cashier from Norges Bank named Svier Bell, not Odd Henry. He died 2 days after the attack on Andelsnes, most likely from shock. Details like this may seem minor, but they influence how we perceive real history. That said, I don't think this diminishes the film. It's common for dramatizations to tweak historical events to create more tension, conflict, and drama. However, I do wish the film had included more of the real dramatic moments that actually took place. There were plenty to choose from that wasn't included in the film. In the end, The Gold Run is an entertaining and, for the most part, historically accurate film, which I would recommend to all history lovers. If you'd like to learn more about the real-life gold transport and the details the movie left out, check out my 2 previous videos, The Incredible Norwegian Gold Run, where I cover even more fascinating facts, and my lecture at the University of Essex in 2024, where I, along with the grandchild of Nini and Christian, explored this incredible story in greater depth. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe for more exciting historical content.